The traditional and wise saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me," has increasingly lost its meaning in many parts of the world. To many, nothing will hurt their emotional well-being and sanctity of mind quite like words will, especially words that ill intent can be read into, whether it was intended or not. In fact, the pendulum has swung so far in the direction of outrage culture that the pushback has come, as evident by Dave Chappelle's timely and aptly titled comedy special Sticks and Stones, having made headlines not just in the US, but internationally as well. Chappelle may have led to more professionals within the entertainment industry speaking up for common sense, because now, someone from the progressive bastion that is Star Trek Discovery has spoken up. In this editorial, I will cover how novelist and screenwriter Walter Mosley left the Star Trek Discovery writing room because he felt he didn't have a voice there, and how such a culture in the writer's room may manifest itself on screen. If you like the content of this video, then leave a like, leave a comment, help share, and if you're new, hit subscribe and smash that bell to get notifications on all videos. And now, without further ado, let's look at what's happened. On September 6th, the New York Times posted an opinion piece penned by award-winning novelist and screenwriter Walter Mosley. In this piece, he wrote about his decision to leave the writer's room of an at the time unnamed TV show, over him being reported to and reprimanded by HR over his use of a derogatory term in the writer's room. Later, the Hollywood Reporter revealed the TV show in question to have been Star Trek Discovery. At the most surface level, this might look like a case of a writer using a derogatory term, for which he was reprimanded by HR, and then he quit. He wasn't fired, he left of his own free will, so you could be forgiven for thinking, what's the big deal? Well, there is more to it than the surface level. What this is really about is silencing voices, even if they express words you may not like, and what repercussions that might have. Walter Mosley is black. Furthermore, he is old enough to have vivid recollections of everything that happened on the national stage since the 60s. He will have felt it, and he will have lived through it. Those experiences no doubt shaped who he grew up to be, as well as his expression as a writer. He shared some of those experiences in the Star Trek Discovery writing room, where he told the story of what a cop had once told him. Namely, that on the streets of Los Angeles, this cop stopped all in paddy neighborhoods and all paddies in neighborhoods, because they were usually up to no good. Mosley wasn't calling anyone a or a paddy for that matter. He wasn't directing any kind of slur at anyone. Instead, he was retelling a true story that he had experienced as he remembered it. But even within this context, his usage of the N-word had made someone in the room uncomfortable. Mosley says he doesn't know who. It could have been a man, a woman, something in between, a black, an Asian, or a white. The Star Trek writing room is pretty diverse. But whoever it was, this individual saw fit to report Mosley to HR. At HR, Mosley was, in his own words, so I quote, "chastised for criticizing the word that oppressed me and mine for centuries. As far as I know, the word is in the dictionary. As far as I know, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence assure me of both the freedom of speech and the pursuit of happiness. How can I exercise these freedoms when my place of employment tells me that my job is on the line? If I say a word that makes somebody, an unknown person, uncomfortable, there's all kinds of language that makes me uncomfortable, half the utterances of the president, for instance. Some people's sexual habits and desires, but I have no right whatsoever to tell anyone what they should and should not cherish or express." He went on to say, "I do not believe it should be the object of our political culture to silence those things said that make some people uncomfortable. Of course, I'm not talking about verbal attacks or harassment, but if I have an opinion, a history, a word that explains better than anything how I feel, then I also have the right to express that feeling or that word without the threat of losing my job. That, my friends, is the issue here. In being such an accomplished writer, Mosley said it better than I ever could. The worst thing you can do to citizens of a democratic nation is to silence them. And the easiest way to silence a woman or a man is to threaten his or her livelihood. Let's not accept the McCarthyism of secret condemnation. Instead, let's delve a little deeper, limiting the power that can be exerted over our citizens, their attempt to express their hearts and horrors, and their desire to speak their truths. Only this can open the dialogue of change. Before The Hollywood Reporter revealed to the world that this had indeed transpired in the Star Trek Discovery writers' room, they reached out to CBS for a comment. CBS responded, "We have the greatest admiration for Mr. Mosley's writing talents and we're excited to have him join Star Trek Discovery. While we cannot comment on the specifics of confidential employee matters, we are committed to supporting a workplace where employees feel free to express concerns and where they feel comfortable performing their best work. We wish Mr. Mosley much continued success." That is a nice, honest statement, but I cannot help but think it sounds like their intention is for the writer's room to be something of a safe space. From one point of view, you have to be sympathetic to where CBS are coming from. The Hollywood Reporter recounts the story of how Harberts and Berg had been increasingly abusive to the writing staff during their stint as showrunners. And we have heard stories of another rather prolific individual in the writing room using the gay slur that Dave Chappelle wasn't allowed to use in The Chappelle Show about Anthony Rapp's character Stamets, accompanied by a gay-pitched voice mocking him and possibly a limp wrist motion. That guy is no longer involved with Star Trek Discovery, and rightfully so, because that was bigotry targeting one specific individual. HR are right to act forcefully in situations like that, but this wasn't such a situation. This was a situation where the one reporting mostly to HR should have been told by HR that there is such a thing as context. And in this particular context, it might have been better to swallow your discomfort. Come back if and when Mosley uses the word as an intended slight directed at someone. Then HR can chastise him. Until then, no harm has been done here, apart from the stifling of creativity. Because the larger democratic issues aside, I don't think any good writing can come from this. Star Trek Discovery is a very diverse series with identitarian politics at its foundation. But where it could have been sharp, it is in my opinion soft. Where it could have been cutting edge, it is in my opinion meandering. Where it could have been smart, it is in my opinion dumb. It is Star Trek in name only. The Orville is the real Star Trek now. Part of that may be due to the CBS working environment, where everyone can express their concerns, so everyone can feel safe. But that also means no one gets to say anything that steps on anyone else's foot. No one can have their ideas challenged. No one in the room, that is. Everyone outside is fair game, I guess. Especially those who don't share the virtuous ideals of those in the room. That's how you create an echo chamber, one which easily can become increasingly radicalized. I don't think that is a very conducive environment to write good science fiction in. On the contrary, I think that can help explain how the writers of Star Trek Discovery, many of which are talented in their own right, can produce such utter drivel for Star Trek Discovery. I bet that if Walter Mosley had been in the Orville writer's room and relayed the exact same story there, using those exact words, the response wouldn't have been reporting him to HR, but figuring out how to develop that experience into another episode of the Orville that still does what Star Trek used to do. I have a good feeling this is something our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett may want to dive into, so check out his observations. We may even explore it more ourselves, so check back for that as well. Till then, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.